Scoring can be very confusing in the sport of bowling, but it can also become quite simple. So in today's video, we'll learn about the background of the scoring system in 10-pin bowling and how you can understand it better going forward. So let's get into it. Alright, welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be getting into the background of the scoring system and how it got started in the first place, and then continue on to where we are today, and how everything has kind of changed over the years, where you go from writing it down on a piece of paper to it's all done for you, it's all automated, and it's on a digital screen right in front of you, so you don't have to do any work at all. So I'm going to get into a few points here with a couple different slides, and then I'll explain it better at the end of the video of how the scoring system works, in case you are confused about it at home. And even if you're a seasoned professional, or if you're just starting out and you're a beginner, hopefully you can get something out of this video, and then you can take that with you on your bowling journey going forward. So let's get off with the first point here. The first point is manual scoring. Before 1895, scoring was done by hand, on paper, with pencils, which could be time consuming and prone to errors. And I remember when I was younger, they still did that. And here I was born in 1996. So when I started when I was 4 or 5. And they were still writing it down on a piece of paper, and I didn't understand why, but it dates back all the way to 1895, when they first started to score. That's how they've always done it, and it's just been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And a lot of the old school people, they still wanted to write it down even whenever I was younger. So that's how far it kind of led into the future, even though we already had the automated scoring system in place. Now, next point is old scoring system, a system that resulted in a maximum of 200 points for 20 balls, was in use before the ABC, the American Bowling Congress. So what we know as the scoring system today is a total of 300 points with 12 balls. What used to is actually a total of 200 points with 20 balls. So we're going to have to do the math on that a little bit later on, then I'll explain how they could have got to the total of 200 instead of the total of 300, because online there's not too much information about that scoring system. So I'll try to come up with a system that would add up to 200 points of what it may have been. All right, next point is the new scoring system was implemented on September 9th, 1895, where 12 balls would equal 300 points. So that's the scoring system that we know of today, and that started on September 9th, 1895. The next one is mechanical scores. Introduced in the mid-20th century, these machines use gears and levers to automate some parts of the scoring process. So it wasn't quite to where we know it today yet in the mid-20th century, but they were getting closer, so that way you didn't have to totally be dependent on yourself, because people, they would make mistakes. So this was kind of helping the process along, of helping the person not make as many mistakes whenever they're doing their own score. Okay, next point, automatic electronic scoring. In 1967, the first fully automatic electronic scorer was introduced by Brunswick at Village Lanes in Chicago. So it took all the way until 1967, so all the way from 1895 to 1967, until we finally got the first fully automatic electronic scorer. So that was a long period of time there. And as you know, as technology is produced and then put out onto the market at full scale, it takes a long time before everybody starts to use it too. So when that was introduced in 1967, that was a big deal, but it took a long time for it to really be put into all of the bowling centers across the nation. All right, the next point is the detection system. This was possible because of the detection system that was developed in the 1960s that could determine which pins were knocked down. So that was a huge thing too, where we know of it today. The machine knows exactly which pin is knocked down, so that way it knows which score to put up. So if you leave the 7-10 split, it knows exactly that the 7 and the 10 are left standing, and as it sweeps the pins away, you now have the 7-10 split still standing after everything has been swept away. So that was the start of it. It needed a detection system in order to be able to do that. All right, next point here, the decline of manual scoring. With the rise of automated scoring, the practice of manually keeping score significantly declined. So as you can imagine, just like with me, I've never understood the process of keeping your score manually. To me, it was a waste of time. But if you grew up in the era of when people were still doing that, you just do it because it's out of habit and it may be fun for you to keep your own score. Whereas for me, even being born in 1996, that really wasn't a thing that I wanted to do because the machine was already keeping the score for me. So as the rise of the automated scoring gets more popular and people stop doing it themselves, then finally that's kind of being pushed out. And you don't, I mean, I haven't seen people writing down their own scores for many years. So it's probably been, I would say it probably went away maybe in 2010, maybe a little bit before that. I'm not sure, but I would say somewhere around there. So, but it took a long period of time before people actually stopped keeping their own score. All right, next point, the advancements. So modern systems use LED flat screen monitors, advanced pin setter technologies, and high definition 3D animations, which is what you see in bowling centers around the country and really around the world, where it's all modern technology, and you'll see different 3D cartoon characters, different things that you'll see. It's always sometimes funny. So it's different in the entertainment world than it is in the professional world, like with tournaments. So you'll get a little bit different things depending on where you're at and where you go. The fully automated. The current standard is that bowlers only need to bowl, and the machine handles both scoring and resetting the pins, which is what I was talking about with the detection system. And that's what it goes back to. So without that system, the machine doesn't know which pins to set up, and you yourself would have to figure out how to put that into the system. Well, everything is it's all automated, and so you don't have to worry about anything, which is great. I couldn't imagine getting somebody to set up the pins for me like back in the day with the old pin boys, and saying I left such and such, and to tell them, hey, you done it wrong, we gotta fix the score here. So that would be very confusing. All right, so now we're going to break down the scoring system, how it works, and how the old system was, and then how the scoring system works today, and break down the differences. And understanding the scoring system properly will help you going forward and help you understand why the scoring system is the way that it is. All right, so I got written down here with the old scoring system of how that it could have been done. Um, so it's 20 shots with 200 points total. So that would mean to me 20 shots total, every one had to be a strike. And if you got to the end to the end right here, which is the final frame, like with what we have today, where you have to get 3 strikes, and the 10th frame in order to get a 300 game. That's what it would be in the old scoring system, where you would have to get 3 strikes in the final frame in order to get a 200 game. So that would mean you would have to get 20 strikes in a row in order to get a 200 game. Which I understand why that they changed it to the new process of 12 strikes in a row, because this would be a much longer game, and the scoring would have to be very confusing back in that time of, you know, trying to keep track of what everybody has done with so many shots having to be totaled in order to figure out what the final score is. So I totally understand that mental process there. So just to recap, it would be a total of 18 frames with a total of 20 shots in order to get a 200 game. So this is the old scoring system, and then now we will move on to the new scoring system, and you'll see a clear difference of the two, and that way you can understand that going forward. So as you can see, I got written down with the new scoring system. You can see a clear difference of the old scoring system compared to the new scoring system, and the clear difference is everything triples. So whenever you get 3 strikes in a row, this now becomes 30, then 60, then 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, and so on. So you can see a clear difference, and I understand why they went to this new scoring system at that period of time, because one, it was shorter, and it became more simpler, and it was less time consuming. So I completely understand that. And with also the other clear difference is it's only 10 frames, whereas the old scoring system would have to be 18 frames in order to get to that 200 score. So hopefully you learned something there. And then now for all the beginners, if you don't understand the scoring system completely, I will explain that, so that way that you can better understand that going forward. Okay, so in this part of the video, I'm going to explain for all the beginners out there, how does the scoring system work? Why is it when I get a 7 spare, it's now this score, or a 6 spare, or if I miss a spare, why does it work like that? So hopefully this part of the video helps all the beginners out there who's just trying to understand how the scoring system works. So let's get into that. Okay, for all you beginners out there and you're still with me in this video, I'm going to explain the scoring system to you, and hopefully this helps you going forward in your bowling journey. So I'm going to do a couple different scenarios. So let's say we start off with 3 in a row. Let's say we get 3 strikes in a row. Then we get a 9 miss, 7 miss, a double, 9 spare, strike, 9 spare, strike. Okay, so the basics of the scoring system is, in case you don't know at home, is once you get a strike and then you get a double, now we are thinking that the value of this first one is now 30. So until we figure out what we do in the third frame, will dictate what happens in the first frame. So since we've got 3 in a row, this now becomes 30 because we got a third strike here. Okay, so now what happens in the fourth frame will dictate what happens in the second frame. So since we have a double here, that will tell us that this now is 30 until we figure out what happens here. So since we know, we got a 9 and a miss. So now that will no longer be 30, it will be 1 less because we got 9. And the reason why that is the base value of each frame will always be 10. So anything less than 10 will now go down by that value. So since it's 1 less, then now this is 1 less than 30, which is 29. So instead of 60, it will now be 59. And then same thing here. So since we have a double here, it will be 20 instead of 30. But it will be one less because we got a 9 in the fourth frame. So now that is 78. And then we have a 9 in the miss. So now makes that 87. So that's through the first 4 frames. If that don't make any sense, you can always rewind the video and go back and watch it again. But we're going to move on to the 5th frame, and we have a 7 in this. So that's basic. All you do is add 7 to the frame before, which is 94. All right, so now we're at the 6th frame, and we have another double. So think in your mind, what would that be? If it's a double, then what happens? Basically what happens is we're doubling and we're thinking that it's going to be 30 because we could get a triple here. But since we don't, and we get a 9, now again, it's 1 less than 10. So that makes this 29 instead of 30. So since we're at 94, what could have been 124 is now 123. That's the same thing here. Since we don't get a strike here, and we get a 9, what was 20 is now 19. So we now add 19 to 123, and that makes that 142. 142, because 20 plus 123 would be 143. So 142, if you can read my writing. And then now we're at the 9 spare. So what's the 9 spare? So again, it's 20, because we get a strike here. If we had gotten a miss, then that would have been only a 9. But since we got a spare, that makes that 162, because we had 142 here. And then the strike now is combined with the 9 spare. So since we get a strike, that's now we're adding 20 again here. So since we get a 9, so we know that's we're adding 20, and that will be 182. So 9 spare again, that's a base score of 10, but then we get a strike, so then again we are adding 20 again. 202. So to explain the 10th frame is always different, because over here it's all based on single frames until you get to the 10th frame. So it's kind of a confusing thing, because over here if you get a 9 spare, it's already 20. Well, if you add a strike to it, well, wouldn't that be 30? You think so, but that's not how it works. More or less, it's kind of like the 9th frame is the foundation frame, as we call it in bowling, and then the 10th frame is your roundabout total. So since we are at 182 here, we can only either double it if we have a 9 spare and a strike, or we can triple it if we get 3 in a row, if that makes any sense. And we'll do one more scenario coming up. I will pause the video and then get into the second scenario. Okay, so now we are into the second scenario, and I'm going to make this maybe a little bit harder. We're going to start off with a double, then a 9 miss, triple, 9 spare, 7 spare, 6 spare, and then we will strike out to end the game. So what does this mean here? Again, we're going to get into why it happens the way that it happens. And whenever you're first starting out, it's kind of like I remember starting out in tennis, trying to learn that scoring system. It's like, well, why is this? Why is that? And I really don't know. It's just the scoring system itself. Somebody at some point created it, and it's made sense over time, so people have stuck with it. So my job is to just basically explain it the best way that I can. So what we're doing here is I will say this here, like I always say, it's a base score of 10. So if you know that starting out, if you get less than 10, let's say you get 9 here instead, well then, now that's less than 10, then you get 9. But if you get a spare with that, then that makes that 20 until you figure out what happens after this. So in this scenario, we've doubled. So now this is 20 in our mind. And until we know what we do in the third frame, this could be 30. So since we've doubled, so then that makes it 30. And if we were to get a 9 spare here, then that still makes that 29 anyways. So since it's one less, that makes that 29, if that makes any sense. So then now, since we've doubled instead of tripled, we now have to do 48 because that's one less than 10. And so then we didn't get a spare. So then that means we only got 9 pins, which then will become 57 because 9 plus 48 is 57. All right, so let's move on to the fourth frame. Fourth frame, again, we have tripled. Well, then what does that mean? That means we have 30 here. So we have to add 30 to 57. And that makes 87. Then 87 will be then added to this. So since we have a triple here and we've doubled on 5 and 6, that means this will be 30 again. But again, it will have to be one less than the 7th because here we get to add 30 because we got 3 in a row. But because we have a 9 spare here, this now has to become 1. See here, what's triple? That'd be 117. So we got to do 116 here because it's a 9 spare. And then this now becomes a base score of 20. So we have to add 19 to 116, which will be 135. 135. Because we had 3 in a row here. So it's a 30, 29, and then 19. And the only reason why it is because we got a 9 spare here. If this had been an 8 spare here, then it would have been different. Then it would have been still, you're adding 30 here, but then we got to do 2 less here, which would have been a 115. And then add 18 here, 2 less than 20 here. And then that would have been, see here, 115, and then 2 less here. That would have been 135. That would have been 133 instead. So you see how the score changes based on what happens here. So since we have a 9 spare and we have 135 here, well then that now becomes 155 because it has to double because we got a spare. And then since we get a 7 spare here, actually, you know what? I messed up. So you see how easy it is to mess up. Because we have a 9 spare here, that needs to be 154. Because again, it's 1 less. So it's, if you were to get a strike, that's 20, but because it's a 9 spare, that's now 19. So you have to add 19 to 135. So that makes that 154. And it's the same thing here. 7 spare, that's now 3 less. So again, it'd be 20. So 3 less than 20 would be 17. So add 17 to 154. That would be 171. And then again, 6 spare, it's 4 less than 10. So minus 4 from 20, which is 16. You have to add 16 to 150. See here. No, we have to add 16 to 171, which will be 187. And then we get 3 in a row to end it. So what would that be? We have to triple it. So then this is now a base value of 30 because the 10th frame is different. Each strike is worth 10 pins. So 10, 20, 30. So add 30. And that means you got a 217. I know that was probably confusing with the way that I explained it, but like I say, if you are confused about it, just rewind the video and then maybe that'll help you going forward. If you have any questions, leave your questions down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video coming up. Thanks for watching.